You're all very welcome to this Practice News webinar on Friday the 5th of February. Practice News is for you. It's for you, the members in practice. It's here to help you, to give you a digest of the topical issues, to run through as many points which we feel are relevant to you as practitioners as you need to hear. Who would have thought when we started the Practice News series that we would still be here in lockdown into February of 2021. So it's look, we're here. We're going to continue this on. I think we'll continue this on after lockdown. This has been very popular. We're absolutely amazed at the interest actually in practice matters this time around. We've almost 500 bookings for Practice News this edition. So look, we're delighted that people are using it to connect, and in talking to people in the past months. That's what people have come back to us and said, look, we're happy to Practice News is there for us to allow us to check in and to connect with our peers. So look, just to introduce ourselves, myself and Jeremy are hosting as usual Practice Consulting. Practice Consulting, our role, as you probably all know at this stage, is to help practitioners, to be there to support practitioners. Please do reach out to us. Please do phone us. We're here to help you with the compliance issues, the practice issues, whatever you like. Pick up the phone. It's a confidential conversation. We're happy to talk to you, and also to help you through these means. But today we are giving out Practice News, and we're delighted to have guests on this morning. Delighted to have Nora, who we can hardly call you a guest, Nora, because you're nearly a feature here these days, Nora. We're delighted to have you to talk about tax and government supports, and indeed the taxation of government supports. Delighted to have you, and indeed we are really pleased this morning to have our president, Paul Henry, on. Paul, to talk to you, the members in practice. So you're very welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much indeed, Conal, and I look forward to having a chat and taking any questions later on in the seminar. So thank you.
Absolutely. So there we go. Like I say, look forward to that chat, Paul. Now, before that, though, I'm going to hand you over. No, I'm not going to do that just yet. Just yet. I want to talk to you about who you are. So we've got even better graphics and demographics about who you are now, as you can see, for the new year. And once again, it's members in practice. That's what it's for. That's who we advertise it to, north and south. Good representation from the Republic and Northern Ireland. We probably a little light in Northern Ireland. I expect Northern Ireland members are there working on tax season at the moment, but you're hopefully will download this afterwards and use the resource. So delighted to have you all. We have one member from further overseas, I believe from Bulgaria. So you're very welcome. And we don't have anyone from England, Wales, or Scotland. So no rugby banter this morning. It's just the island of Ireland. And as you can see from the graphic, from throughout the island. So it's great. It's great that people are able to check in. One thing that the internet, the virtual communication is, it's a great leveler. People can check in from anywhere they want, anywhere in the world, anywhere on the island. So there you go. That's who you are. And as I say, this is all about you. It's all about your concerns. So do use the Q&A, do use the chat to talk to us. And there's a huge number on this morning. Huge number of bookings, huge number on the call. We'll get to as many as we can. That's what I say. And we might run over slightly. That's the way I'm thinking about it at the moment. Right, so we'll move on. What we're going to be covering quite a lot. Jeremy is going to give you an overview of compliance issues. Then we're going to talk about employee business support schemes, updates of the tax update. Also, that's going to be Nora, and then myself and Paul are going to be talking. And a lot to get through. Jeremy, who was setting this thing up, he said, you know what, bit Conal, the bit where you talk less at the beginning, but just talk less. Okay, we've got to move quickly. Got to move quickly to this. All right. The usual disclaimer applies. Naturally, it's a webinar, guys. It's a webinar. So, we're going to be referring you to resources. Go to the resources themselves. Don't rely entirely on the webinar. We're here to point you towards them as opposed to give you sort of the full story about these things. I think that's pretty obvious by now. All right, so there we go. That was quick. So I'm going to hand you over now to Jeremy. Jeremy, it's all you.
Conal, thanks very, very much. And you took my advice. You spoke very, very quick. And I'm going to try to take my own advice now for the next maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm going to give you a very quick update on 3 or 4 stories just to highlight from Practice Matters, which was issued this week, just to give you the key points that's in these stories, but also where you can go and find other reference materials. Now, firstly, with relation to Practice Matters itself, as you will know from previous Practice News webinars, this February edition is the first edition we haven't issued in hard copy. We've sent by email linking to our website. So early this week, you should have received an email from Practice Consulting for everyone who is working in practice and who's a member of the Institute with your link to Practice Matters. If you didn't actually do that, it might be because you need to actually update your actual email settings for getting Practice Consulting and getting practice related emails in the My Account section of the Institute website. Not to worry anyway, if you haven't got a issue of Practice Matters yet, you can just go to our website, the link here, and actually download it. So that's Practice Matters and the practice updates. So Conal, if you can just click ahead. And my first story of the day, and it's the one really that is one of the lead stories for the last years actually now, and still continues. We are of course now into the new post-transition period, Brexit. We're in the new trading environment. And our lead story this week really is 2 pages giving you, the practitioner, just the key points you need to know on Brexit. We've had, of course, the deal on Christmas Eve, and such points as what's the treatment of VAT and goods and services, customs, data flows, and so on as well. Now, again, a very good summary actual article prepared by our advocacy and voice team. But again, there will be certain areas where you'll need to drill down and get more detail. And that's why we have our Brexit Hub. I know my colleague Crona, who is our Brexit lead, was on before Christmas on our Practice News webinars, giving you some details of what resources we have available. These keep evolving, and our Brexit Hub is quite literally updated on a daily basis. Now, one new actual series of webinars we've been running in January is our Ask the Expert series. Now, these are webinars that vary between 1 hour, sometimes 2 to 3 hours, where we bring in experts, be it talking about certain detailed rules with relation to VAT or customs for each jurisdiction, Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, UK. So such speakers as Anthony Buckley, Francis Devlin from KPMG. We've had about 3 or 4 of these webinars, just giving the link to a couple of them in January. And again, there are more coming up actually in February as well. So definitely if you want to get up to speed on a certain topic on Brexit, do check these out. Conal, if you can just click ahead to the next actual slide. Lots more materials as well. There was actually a free Brexit webinar just actually at the beginning of last week. Many of you I'm sure attended. It was actually including Carol Lynch from BDO, but also Tony Connolly from RT, the European correspondent in Brussels. And Tony was able to give a great overview, as I say, of, I suppose, negotiations, where things stand nearly a month in now to the new relationship between the EU, the UK, working out, I suppose, different issues we're seeing on even such things as the protocol and so on as well. And Carol, of course, was able to give an in-depth review on such customs questions and the nitty-gritty. So if you haven't checked that out, you can get that webinar at the link here when you get the slides. Now, if you want a little bit more detail on Brexit, there is, of course, our certificate in customs and trade. We're actually into our 5th intake starting very soon. Down here the 17th of February, I think it might be a little bit later, maybe into early March. But it's been very successful so far. I've had some great feedback from people who've been through it. I think we have a couple of classes graduated already, and people who have actually been through it are really getting, I suppose, use for their newfound qualification and finding great demand for their services. So definitely, if you are interested in getting skilled in the customs and trade area, this 8-week certificate is really something for you. Of course, finally, we have our Brexit Digest, which is issued to all members who also get their tax news. So if you have not getting a Brexit Digest, it usually comes out fortnightly. There was one actually just yesterday issued, very detailed with all the latest updates. And also it was focusing on customs yesterday. So the do's and don'ts, some very good articles. I skimmed through it myself now and I must go back for further detail. But if you're not getting your Brexit Digest, again, go to the My Account section and tick to get tax news. And again, you can actually get all the previous ones that have been going since about November, December, every fortnight at that actual link there. Finally, of course, if you do have any Brexit queries, I have to say Crona and her team in the Advocacy and Voice have been doing great work in this area. So if you do have any Brexit queries, please pop them on to Crona and you can actually get her at that email address there. So that's the quickest summary ever of Brexit, I think, or the most likely to be for the next probably couple of months as well. So I'm going to go on to my second topic, Conal, if I can. And this is one as well that, of course, is very important for members in practice. And some of you, I'm sure, have already been using this. It's our new technical hub. And again, credit for this goes to our Advocacy and Voice team, particularly Dee Moore and her team. And I suppose what we're trying to do here is trying to bring in a replacement for Chariot. And this has been in place since early January. Charity has been with us for many, many years, and a very useful resource it has been. But we wanted something that was perhaps more user-friendly now and easier to navigate. So for you, those of you who are frequent users, past users of Charity, or even the new hub, what's on it? Look, there's a lot of very simple sections there that are easy to navigate, and a lot of detail on audit and assurance, financial reporting, insolvency, and also, of course, the company's legislation in the UK and in Ireland, and a lot of institute content as well. So if you want to get the latest IFRS standards on auditing, be the FRC for the UK and Northern Ireland, or actually IASA based, or the actual FRS 100 to 105, you can get it all there. So a lot of good stuff. Conal, if you can click on to the next slide. Here as well, then, there is, of course, our own institute materials. So, of course, we issue on a regular basis technical alerts and releases, and they go back a number of years as well. Information sheets, even those miscellaneous technical statements that can go back many, many years. You can find all of these on the new hub. For those of you who might be a little bit unfamiliar with the hub or haven't actually gone in yet to check it out, good news is there is a mapping document, and you can find that link there, which will find you the key areas and the key things and link it back to what we used to have on Chariot. Now, the key thing here is my advice to anybody here is to actually just, if you're haven't checked out the hub so far, the link is back in the previous page, just go in and browse around it. I've done a little bit now in the last couple of weeks myself. I found it very easy to use. Like anything, we're going to be adding further pages to this hub over the coming weeks and months. It's a resource that's definitely there for you to use. And if you do have actually going in there, if you're having any problems finding anything on it, you can actually contact the Advocacy and Voice team with your queries or even your comments if you see something to improve in it as well. So it's a resource for you. A lot of work and time has gone into it to develop it. So please do use it. That's as much as I can say on the Institute Technical Hub. Next topic for me, Conal, if you can click ahead.
It's fighting with me here, Jeremy.
Okay, well, the next topic I am going to talk about is audits. And so, of course, for those auditors who are on here today, this is, of course, your busy season now, January into February. But, of course, Brexit has its own implications for audit as well. Now, the very good news, and I know there has been communications from our Professional Standards Department, and we've talked about it in previous Practice News webinars, is that the status quo for auditors, no matter what part of the island or further afield you're on, will remain with relation to your audit rights in the other jurisdiction. That's the good news. A link was sent from Professional Standards from Aidan Lamb and with an update on this just in early December. So if you haven't seen that, you can get it at that link there, the audit registration link. Now, of course, Brexit does have implications for everything, and audit is not without those implications as well. And one of those is that the Institute has had to look at its own audit regulations, and to reflect the new relationship between the EU and the UK since 1 January, they've drafted some new audit regulations. Now, the good news is there's not big changes there. Some of them is just to remove references to ROI and EEA auditors. These new regulations are just for the UK and Northern Ireland. There's a draft copy of them available at the link here. So anybody who is an auditor in UK and Northern Ireland and is on the webinar this morning, I would say to you to download those, just see the changes and familiarise yourself. They're still subject to approval. We will be communicating when we have them formally approved. And of course, for ROI auditors here, the actually existing audit regulations will stay in place, the ones that you're familiar with since 1 January 20. And again, they can be downloaded from our website as well if you just want to re-familiarise yourself with it. So 2 new sets of audit regulations is the key news here. 1 new set actually, but 2 existing sets of regulations. Conal, if you can just click ahead. I suppose one of the longer term implications as well, potentially for audit, is that we are, and this is a symptom of it now, 2 sets of audit regulations seeing regulatory divergence between Ireland and the UK post-Brexit. Very little so far, but as time goes by, it is more likely that you will see more changes, be it the audit regulations themselves, different law and different things and how it impacts on those, but also even just around CPD and so on as well. Now, we realised that a lot of our audit member firms would only have clients in their own home jurisdiction and might not have the time or the energy or not have clients in the other jurisdiction. And consequently, having to keep up to speed with 2 divergent audit regulations is something that just wouldn't be for them. So with that in mind, Professional Standards has written to all the audit compliance principals in both jurisdictions in early January. And it's giving you the option now to actually just limit your audit registration to just one jurisdiction, and the consequent then CPD requirements, whatever it may be going forward that you will actually be required to live by, will be limited to that. Again, if you want to keep your status quo, and if you have clients in both jurisdictions, no problem with that. You don't have to apply to professional standards at all on this communication, and you will be actually registered to do audits in both jurisdictions. But if you do want to limit yourself to the single jurisdiction, limit your work going forward to keep up to speed in this area, you can contact professional standards. That's the email address there. And again, if you have any questions on what this means for you, and particularly for your firm, contact professional standards as well at that email address. That's as much as I can say on the changes on audit for Brexit. And Conal, I'm sticking with audit, and I think my next slide is just a very quick update with relation to some changes that we've had on ethical standards, but also the wider ISAs. Now, my first one here on the right is the new ethical standard for auditors for the Republic of Ireland, issued by IASA. It says November, it was actually issued in early December. If you click that IASA link there, you'll get all the details where it's updated its ethical standard. Now, the good news is these new standards won't actually come into force until periods beginning on or after July 21. You can early adopt. There are some changes as well for Irish auditors under these new requirements for the Irish ISAs. So again, I would say to you to familiarise yourself with these, go to the link, see what's changed. I know we've covered them in detail in some of our auditing courses before Christmas, and we'll talk about them again in our specific auditing courses. This morning's forum, I'm not going to get into detail on that, but just to give you the heads up, and there is some details as well in Practice Matters in our article on this. Just to say to you as well, FRC were a little bit ahead on these changes. Why the time gap is here is that the coronavirus crisis, of course, came in. They revised their ethical standard at the end of 19, early 20, coming into force in March of 2020. So for people in the UK and in Northern Ireland, some of these changes will be in force, and you'll be applying them for audits ended in 2020 and early 2021. So again, to just get yourself up to speed on that, and click the FRC link, and you'll see what changes came in about a year ago now for early 2020. So again, that's as much as I'm going to say on that, and I'm going to leave that topic there. My final topic here to talk about, and it's one, of course, that has been very emotive, I think, for lots of our members in recent weeks. It's around the CRO and updating their actual core portal system. And of course, the good news, the annual return deadline extension. So from early January on, really, a lot of concerns were raised by our members with the Institute around the new core portal that was launched in mid-December by the CRO. The concerns were, I suppose, centered around two areas. A lot of technical problems with relation to the portal itself, particularly from Christmas onwards as people began to use it more. And also as well with relation to the new processes that were introduced for actual making annual returns as part of the new portal. So again, our obviously invoice team, and Dee Moran would have been our chief lead and continues to be our chief lead with the CRO in this regard. And Dee gathered together all the issues, and she was talking to many members, and myself and Conal were as well. And we put together an overall letter to the CRO, and we communicated with them on this matter. You can get the link there. The letter would have been put together in about the 15th of January. And the CRO did reply back about a week later, and you can get that at the responded link as well. Now, for those of you, I'm sure, who are agents and every day dealing with the CRO, the good news is that we are seeing progress on rectifying some of these issues. I'm sure some of you on the webinar here today are seeing progress on this. There's a lot more work to go still, though, and the CRO acknowledged this, that the system is still far from perfect, but I have to give them credit. Yes, they are addressing these issues. Some might say it's a little bit late, but they are making progress. So well done on that. Now, something as well, of course, early this week, very welcome news for all agents and for all accountants, that there has been a 3-month extension to the annual returns from what the original date was the 26th of February, now to the 28th of May, for the 3-month extension. And this is for returns that were due to be made 30th of September 2020 and afterwards. Very welcome news for our agents, particularly bearing in mind the ongoing health restrictions we have here in the Republic of Ireland, and indeed in other jurisdictions as well. That will continue at the highest level into March at least, but also with the technical issues on the portal. All I can say is that Dee and her team will continue to liaise with the CRO on the ongoing portal issues and other relevant matters. And what I would say to anybody here who's on the call today and who's having issues with the CRO is, first of all, It's difficult, I know, to contact him in recent weeks, and it's been acknowledged by the Registrar of Companies, Maureen O'Sullivan, but please do email and log your query with the CRO when it's client specific. If you're not getting any joy, or if it's a particular issue, of course, you can come back to the Institute and we can try to liaise on your behalf as well. And again, a bit like our initial letter, we put together a summary of this here. For any updates on our progress and what we get back from the CRO, you can check us out on e-news, usually on a Friday. Dee would give an update, and also our social media platforms. That's the CRO, as much as I can tell you at the moment on it. And that's my 4 updates actually with relation to Practice Matters. But of course, Practice Matters also has a tax update and a government supports update. And I'm delighted to be joined by Nora here today, as ever. And I know, Nora, just because it's a new year, there's still been a lot of work and a lot of changes continue with the government supports and of course in the tax area. I'm not going to say any more. I'm out of breath. I'm going to leave you give an overview. So over to you, Nora.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Yes, indeed, we have reported on the taxation, what's new at least in the taxation of the SS in Practice Matters, which issued to our members. So what can I add to that? Well, the key things that we're trying to find out is all the information and questions that you're having to encounter at the moment. So I have a long list in with revenue at the moment asking for clarification on for example, if a PAYE taxpayer with a spouse who's self-assessed, can that individual claim to have their TWSS liability spread over 4 years starting from 2022? And also, does that also apply to, let's say, a proprietary director who's technically self-assessed but is a PAYE taxpayer also? Another issue that we have in with revenue is on the Bik concession. So we're trying to get clarity around whether the Bik concession can apply to a self-assessed taxpayer, again, the proprietary director, or a spouse of a self-assessed taxpayer. And indeed, how does the employer go about calculating the tax for the purpose of qualifying for the Bik concession? So those queries went into revenue there early last week, and I got an email back from the principal officer who's working on that, saying that they will have clarification to us in the near future. So I hope to be able to provide that information on tax news and also post it up on e-news as soon as it becomes available to us. Our other point that we were in contact with revenue is on the taxation of the government supports in the hands of the employer. As you will be aware, in the temporary wage subsidy scheme guidance, there is a line which states that the employer is not entitled to a tax deduction for the TWSS in the calculation of the income tax or corporation tax liability of the employer. So the question is then, well, how is it taxed? So what is the tax treatment? And revenue have provided clarification that they do not view the TWSS as a taxable grant in the hands of the employer. Their view is that the employer was essentially a conduit or an agent, and that the TWSS is direct payment to the employee, which we are all painfully aware is now taxable in the hands of employees. And likewise then, what is the position for the EWSS? Because the EWSS guidance says that it is a taxable grant, or it is a part of the taxable income of the employer for the employer's corporation or income tax calculation. And revenue clarified that by confirming that the employer is entitled to a deduction for the element of the EWSS that's represented in their payroll costs, subject to the proviso that if there is an enhanced payment, for example, the enhanced payments that were introduced on the 20th of October, which will now run till the 31st of March, and the enhanced payment exceeds the gross salary or wage of the employee, well, then there may be a net liability arising on the difference on that. Another key support that was received by a lot of employers was the Restart Grant, and we asked Revenue, how is that taxable? Revenue's position is that there is no special tax treatment on the Restart Grant, so therefore it is taxable like a normal government grant. Government grants are taxable unless they're specifically stated as being exempt. The Restart Grant isn't stated as being exempt, so therefore you need to consider normal principles when you're working out the tax treatment of the Restart Grant. And the principles that would be taken would be to consider if the Restart Grant was used for capital or revenue purposes. So what was the money that the Restart Grant was expended on, and what does that represent, capital or revenue expenditure? And then the tax treatment follows. So we have that information posted up on our website on the COVID-19 hub, and I'm happy to share the link to that information with you after this webinar, and we'll also be posting it up on Tax News on Monday. And hopefully that will also help inform the accounting treatment, which my colleagues are also looking into providing guidance on. So the next issue that we're also working on is the matter of the PUP payments. And I see already that we have a number of emails in or questions in on the chat there this morning on there's something after occurring with the PUP payments and employees' tax credits. I have an email in again with revenue on this. I'm trying to work out what does this mean, because this literally is something that I wasn't aware of till this morning, and also it's something obviously that's coming up on your horizon now with the payroll being run today. So we're going to be getting information to you on that, hopefully on Tax News on Monday. I also can see there from questions that have been posed that you're interested on the continuation of the wage support scheme, the EWSS, after the 31st of March. I can see from reports in the newspapers this week that the government has indicated that it does intend to continue with the wage supports. We don't know if that continuation will be in the form of the employment wage subsidy scheme. The Minister for Finance on the day of the budget did state that there would be no cliff edge ending to the wage supports. And now the reports in the media this week suggest that the government is thinking about keeping on those supports until the end of the year. There seems to be a review going on with the Department of Trade and Enterprise and with the Minister for Finance on how they should continue on with these schemes. We did write to the Minister in December, noting how important it is that the wage supports should continue for 2021. However, we did ask that there is a consideration given to the complexity and the compliance around the wage supports, because while the wage supports that we've experienced to date, such as the TWSS and the EWSS, have been highly effective and they're easily accessible, the compliance in showing that there is regulation has been met and that all the revenue requirements around those supports has been met, it is burdensome. It can be difficult, and there are a lot of changes and updates to the rules around those. And of course, as we know from the way the temporary wage subsidy scheme, there was a widespread check on those eligibility criteria in the middle of the support, which wasn't helpful for businesses who were trying to get back up on their feet and run their business with all of the COVID-19 restrictions in place at the same time. So we did make that point to the Minister. So the message is that the Institute and the profession does need calls on the government to continue on with the wage supports, but that there must be consideration given to the compliance that's surrounding these supports, that it has to be manageable. Another issue actually that has just been flagged in terms of the employment wage subsidy scheme is that Revenue have issued another update to the guidance on the announcement by the Minister that the enhanced rates will continue until the 31st of March. And from Revenue's point of view, the employment wage subsidy scheme seems to be working now, and that the number of queries that they're getting on it are reducing. And that would also be our experience in terms of our feedback here from the membership. However, they're flagging that there's a problem with employers continuing to use the EWSS marker in the payroll submission, where the employer has deregistered for the EWSS or the employee's wage is outside the thresholds. So that could raise problems for the employer in terms of checks and unnecessary feedback from Revenue. So would you just watch that on behalf of your members, or sorry, on behalf of your clients, that they are using the correct markers, just to ensure that they can reduce any risk of raising questions from revenue now or at a future point when and if the EWSS will be subject to a compliance check. So that rounds up my update for you today. I have a number of questions coming in there. I'm trying to deal with them as we get them. I see that there are a number of queries in from the audience today on VAT. VAT is something that you really need your head full-time in to go there. So I would highly recommend that you take a look at the Ask the Expert webinars that we have available on our website that Jeremy has also referenced there to deal with the specific issues there on the VAT queries. And I'll do my best there to continue to answer questions on the wage supports. So thanks very much for your time. And as always, your feedback is really important. We don't know what's going on unless you tell us. So we're always here to hear from you via emails or a call, whatever forum or format is suitable for you. But it is important that you keep linked in with us and tell us what's going on so that we can bring those issues to revenue on your behalf. So thanks very much, and I hope that's helpful.
Nora, thank you very, very much. As ever, a very, very detailed update. And I know you'll be keeping very busy here answering questions when you're not on camera as well. So thank you very, very much for that. Now, I'm for the next couple of minutes going to give a very quick update with relation to the UK employment support schemes. And really here again, I suppose some of the good news is that there hasn't been as much changes and updates as what we're seeing in the Republic of Ireland schemes. But again, on a weekly basis, we do actually have updates coming through the Institute newsletter, the COVID-19 hub and so on as well. And just this week gone by, updates will listen to the CJRS guidance and also the actual SICE grant, and particularly probably looking ahead to the potential fourth instalment of that grant for the spring period. Again, if you do have any specific queries with relation to any of the support schemes and so on, our colleague Leon Shadoran is always available to contact. Our details here. And the good news is that we will have Leonch actually on our next practice news on the 9th of March. And we're going to look in depth at the UK budget, which is actually on the 3rd of March. I think probably fair to say one of the most important budgets as the Conservative government plans ahead for post-pandemic and for the post-Brexit period as well. So it's going to be a very interesting, I suppose, budget to see what exactly is going to be in their minds to help Britain in the new world. So really looking forward to that one on the 9th of March. And again, for anybody based in Northern Ireland and the UK or indeed the Republic, please pencil that in as well. That's me on the employment updates. So back to you, Conal.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. And now we are delighted to welcome Paul Henry, Director of Osborne King, previous chairman of the Ulster Society, but now President of Chartered Accountants Ireland. So you're very welcome on Practice News this morning, Paul.
Many thanks again, Conal. So it's wonderful to be here with you today.
Very good, Paul. We're slated to talk about the challenges and opportunities that are facing members in practice and indeed the profession as a whole. But about you first, Paul. You trained with and qualified with Price Waterhouse, and subsequently you had a number of senior roles in industry. But I suppose going back to your training as a practitioner, what would be your reflections on that and sort of the unique perspective that you'd have between sort of the business of practice and business, if you like, based on the roles and the perspective that you have.
Well, thanks, Conal, for that. I suppose just a quick overview then, the roles I've had, trained, qualified in Price Waterhouse, moved into insolvency, and that was sort of coming into the late 80s, just the 90s recession, worked in insolvency, gained an insolvency license at that stage. And then as we began to come out of recession, I moved to our development authority, Industrial Development Board, as it was then, equivalent of IDA or Invest NI as it is today. Then moved into venture capital to do investment in growing startup companies, and then back into PwC, merger through corporate finance activities and structured finance. From there for a few years, and joined a challenger practice, a growing practice, ASM, and work with ASM again in a corporate finance type role, putting together deals, buyouts, mergers, and then an opportunity came in commercial property, Osborne King, and I joined there and have been here ever since. Interesting thing, we're very like a practice in terms of we deal in professional services, albeit commercial property. The main components of the business, we have a property management team, which is probably quite like an audit function, relatively recurring, pretty steady income, a lot of compliance issues to be dealt with there. We have our valuation professional advisory side, which is a wee bit more, I suppose, akin to probably a tax department. It's where people are looking at the value of assets, the negotiating rent reviews, lease renewals. So the reading legal documents and then interpreting and negotiating those. And then we have the very public face, probably a wee bit more like a corporate finance type side, dealing side, which is our transactions where we buy and let property. So the very public face of the business. So today's business where I sit in is very like practice. We've come through the years of having the property boom, which was great, and now, like everybody, in much more challenged times. And particularly, you know, I think being based in Belfast, the issues of Brexit coming at us combined with COVID have made the market, I think, for everybody quite challenging, and put extra demands and pressures on those charged with trying to lead and manage their practice through. And I'm sure Conal will come and talk about those later.
Absolutely.
So there's a quick whistle-stop tour.
Absolutely, and it does intrigue me because you do have a unique perspective and having senior roles in practice and business, and when you're looking at sort of adding value for clients in both, what do you focus in on in that? Like what do you sort of have learned, I suppose? What do you wish you had known in practice that you know in business?
Yeah, great question, and I think I think it's just get the basics right, common sense. So what is that? Listen to your clients. Well, most importantly, talk to your clients. And in terms of the business, it's our clients, and in terms of internal to the business, it's actually talking, to my mind, to your people, to your staff, because any issues, any problems, typically I've ever come across, probably down to communication or lack of communication. So I think it's critical just to maintain that discussion. And certainly in the months of last year with COVID, clients were as much uncertain about the environment as we were, and actually just picking up the phone and talking through the issues. And I find it myself, when you actually have to explain the challenges that you're facing to somebody and articulate it, you begin to crystallize in your own mind exactly what the challenge is. And often you can solve the issue just by having somebody listen to you as you talk through it. So communication, I think, would be the number one, and having that ongoing communication, and that is more challenging in this environment. So you have to drive yourself and strive for ways to do it.
And it's those, I mean, and we were discussing this beforehand, but it's those informal communications that you were referring to that you feel are under threat now in the current environment.
I think so, and I think from our business perspective, and for everybody. So I think out in practice in particular, and particularly you know, we have a very diverse profession, and certainly if I'm looking at the practice side of our profession, there are certain organizations, the larger organizations are very well equipped technology-wise and very well equipped procedure-wise to move into the remote working environment and to have structures and software, for want of a better term, platforms that help them do that. For smaller firms, it's much more difficult. And so we've had to adapt. Maybe technology hasn't been as modern and fresh and hasn't maybe been able to cope. And so there's probably been a need in part to look to reinvest in your infrastructure to facilitate that. Even simple things like broadband connectivity. We were very fortunate in our organization. I had just done a full IT refresh in December of 2019. And that put us in a really strong position to be able to move forward when we had to go remote. And in parallel, we'd ordered effectively a very strong fiber connection. If I hadn't done that, I think it would have been very different. And it was just fortuitous timing that, you know, there was no great insight there. So I think using technology to communicate, finding ways, and actually making the effort to talk to people. I think we have to do that, and certainly I would make time to do that, because people can very quickly become disconnected. And also there is, to my mind, a heightened risk of mistakes being made. I'm seeing that, you know, luckily I haven't seen it in our own organization, but materials coming into us where people working remotely don't have the same direct supervision, don't have the same necessarily appetite to just turn to somebody to ask for help, or would you cast your eye over that? Yeah. So I think that there's a big risk for us all to make sure we have that peer review at every level, you know, from your students coming in who have a particular challenged time right now, but to your you know, senior level, audit seniors or seniors, assistant managers, whatever. We really need to encourage them to make sure that if they're not prepared to contact the senior management team, make sure that they're talking across the layer, because mistakes are happening. People are making mistakes because they're not joining things together. They're not seeing the whole picture, and we need to just be very aware of that.
Yeah, it's all about the informal, and it doesn't happen naturally in the current environment. You have to create it, and you know those even the virtual coffee morning is helpful in these contexts when people are off-site, or to get them on-site when that's possible. Certainly, there's been huge changes in the education delivery and huge achievements indeed in the education delivery model in the past year. But do you see those same same issues presenting challenges to that, or what have you been hearing from our members, Paul, in your role as president?
I think, you know, again, just, and it's like everything in life, timing is really critical. So from an institute point of view, we had been piloting what we called e-assessment, education exams online for you know, everybody's knowledge, and we had sort of planned to bring this in a very gradual level, that we would have brought Cap 1 students through that online assessment, and as they then moved to Cap 2, they would do their assessment online with the new intake of Cap 1. So we would effectively be bringing a cohort through over a 3-4 year period who have all just been used to doing their exams online. This year, we had to pause, take a decision, how could we deliver exams? And we took the view that we would ramp up the e-assessment and deliver that across every peer group and level. And we were doing it with knowledge that it was a risk, because we could have had severe embarrassment if it hadn't gone well. But you know, honestly, there were teething issues, but relatively minor. The overall delivery was fantastic. The organization performed extremely well to roll that out. And as we rolled it through CAP 1, CAP 2, and then FAE, we learnt what the glitches were, what the problems were, and we're able to address them.
Yeah.
And we achieved a really successful delivery and outcome. And certainly in my communication with anybody in practice, they have been very positive about the way we were able to adapt and react to that so quickly. That contrasted with other professional bodies. Some just cancelled all their exams and didn't actually deliver them. Others adopted a method where they posted the papers out to students. Students sat the papers, wrote a declaration of compliance, and then posted them back. I just feel we had a much more robust delivery, and touch wood, it was successful. And now we're spinning that into the delivery of education programs. But your question, you know, the challenge, I think the challenge is what I would call the benches experience, where certainly coming through in my training, the people who I went through training with, and you sat in the benches, you sat in the lecture rooms, most of them are really good friends now, and my network of contacts is extensive because of that. I just fear we need to replicate that, because I fear if we don't, our students will miss out, because they need to have that network and that peer communication, because the network is really one of the critical things, I think, to our organization. The fact that we have the ability to come to a seminar like this, we can share ideas, and I think as a profession we are very strong and positive about working together.
Yeah, it's absolutely, I couldn't agree more. The network is so important. One of the things that I'm struck by was the scattering of dots over that map that I showed at the beginning of this presentation, where the members are from. So the virtual education delivery is such a great leveler that anybody at any point of that map can train students now in the same terms almost as anyone in the big population centres. But the challenge is, as you say, is to replicate that network experience. And I think it's fair to say, Paul, we're still listening to members on that as to how it's as what their experiences are, and looking for further feedback from members.
That's perfectly correct, Conal. But what has happened, and full credit to the district societies, which are the real members networking forums.
Yeah.
Because we now have this technology platform, the district societies are now much more able to share seminars, webinars, whatever we call them, and therefore the breadth of topics available are really significant and huge. And there's always something that, there's so much content there, you have to be quite selective in what you dial into. But there's, so I think technology has given us a huge ability actually to share and connect more with our members, and therefore start the conversation and listen.
Absolutely. And as we discussed, I mean, just from your own viewpoint, in if you like, the property industry, when you look out to the impact that's had in Northern Ireland, the new normal, as practitioners who are very often regionally based, are looking at well, what does the new normal mean in terms of locations of the physical locations of practices? I mean, and indeed the clients of those practices. What are you seeing there? What changes are you seeing there? What movements would you identify there that would be important to our members?
I think So I think the pandemic and in a way technology has just accelerated dramatically changes that were probably going to happen in industry, particularly commercial property anyway over time. So everybody's aware of the challenges around the retail sector. Unfortunately, I think those are just fundamental shifts in retailing patterns. So the large high street, the large out of town, big box retailers are going to suffer. They're going to reduce their space. There won't be as many outlets, and people are shopping so much more online. I think for the high street, and particularly the provincial towns, then we have actually come to support local, and a lot of businesses have found that shopping local and the local greengrocer, small shop, butcher, whatever, who have been there for them during lockdown and they've walked to, are actually really good. So I can see the provincial town remaining for that type of good steady going forward, but there'll be other vacancies. So we need to think of how we reuse that retail space that won't be occupied, some of the bigger stuff. And certainly the concept of maybe work hubs beginning to develop, whereby there are touchdown areas for people to come in and take a desk, or organizations, even large firms, to take like a number of desks or rooms in a location, so that people don't have to come back into the city office. So I see the future of work for us in the office very much. The office environment will be needed going forward, but probably not to the footprint and scale that historically we've had. So if you had to pick a figure, I would probably feel people could reduce their footprint by 40% in a modern working way, but have people coming into the office and maybe working remotely for part of the time. They might be able to go to another location and come together in some type of team, because I think the key thing is communication between the team, the spark, the putting together the transactions, just that way of learning the culture of the organization. You won't get that. You will not get culture and practices learned remotely. And that's probably where we have to work very hard for our current new intake of students across all firms, because they're not exposed to the culture. We may laugh, but they probably don't really learn telephone etiquette, because they're not hearing other people on the phone. They don't know how to send an email without putting lots of smiley faces and emojis in it. They don't know how to write what I would call a professional email, because nobody's there showing them. And I don't think they've probably ever written a professional letter or report. So the reality is, that you won't get that remotely. So we need some way of engaging and talking to them.
That could be where we're going. And finally, before we turn it over to the members, just if you were, from your perspective, to identify one sort of direction of travel of the profession, which what the future of the profession, do you see anything new coming forward that practitioners now perhaps who haven't been looking at should be turning their attention to?
Well, I'd say it's two things. One, unfortunately, is that regulation will increase. Regulation, as much as we try and achieve a reasonable level, regulation will become an increasing burden on all businesses, I've no doubt. So unfortunately, that's the reality of it. On the upside, I would say the whole movement to what's termed ESG, environmental social governance,
Yeah.
The notion of and the importance of sustainability is becoming increasingly critical now for all businesses.
Yes.
I'm particularly seeing that, you know, when you stand back at a global investment level, the global funds, the BlackRocks who have just eye-watering amounts of money, are very focused on making sure they invest in sustainable businesses.
Yeah.
And that's going to filter down. And I think the opportunity therefore is for us as a profession, somebody's going to have to capture that information, somebody's going to have to report on it, and ultimately somebody will have to attest it, give an opinion on it. And I think that that's a huge opportunity for us as a profession, and it's one that we are actively taking forward, not only just locally at CAI, but across Europe and across, you know, the world at IFAC, which is a global accounting alliance level. But sustainability and those ESG factors are going to become critical going forward. And also our students are very focused on that too. We need to demonstrate our firms are being, you know, proactive in addressing ESG issues to attract the right caliber of students, because students are much more aware of those matters than perhaps what, you know, historically they would have been, or at my age group we would have been. So ESG, I think, is a big thing coming down the track.
I think absolutely. Ignore it at your peril. It's going to be more of our lives. Paul, that was really interesting. Thank you very much for giving us your time and your insights. Delighted to talk to you, and I hope our members enjoyed it. I'm now going to, we're probably over time, or we're just about on time. So we have a few minutes, as we said at the beginning, to take questions from members. So I don't know, Jeremy, I'll put you on the spot there. Have you seen any?
Yeah, no, we've been getting, it's been a very busy session. We've been getting lots of feedback and different questions, and thank you to everyone, of course, for sending in your questions. So some comments, as I say to you, some, and I know Nora has been very, very busy in the background getting answers to some of these questions. Now, there are some questions with relation to VAT and Brexit and different treatments and so on, and also quite detailed questions. So what we're going to do here is to actually, when we're sending out the slides, but also sending out just the survey and the links, we're going to send you links as well, specifically to the Ask the Expert series, which covers some of these questions and issues. And if anybody has a particular question, as I say to you, you can, of course, contact us on the email I gave you there on the Brexit actual email, and contact Krona on some of those matters, because they are very, very technical and, of course, are client specific. With relation to, as I say to you, just the session gone by here, I found that very, very informative, I have to say. And I'm just looking here, I don't see any particular questions here, but it is great to get that feedback, I suppose, and just sometimes to think about the different issues that's affecting our students in particular nowadays. Paul really highlighted, and things that might have been different from our time 20, 30 years ago when we were students as well. So that's great to get that feedback.
Absolutely, and I would have actually drawn your two final points together for small practices. It's the regulation of the sustainability aspect, which I think is going to impact it. It's the extent to which even smaller companies, I cannot see any other way but that they will be regulated into being more sustainable and inclusive and so forth, and that they will be required to report on that, and it's the accountant who needs to be front and center of that going forward. So I would certainly see that, Paul.
I think that's going to develop. One of the challenges is that there is yet to be developed a set of standards. So what are the key metrics that any organization should even report on? Yeah. Should it be your use of fossil fuels? Should it be your carbon footprint? Should it be the diversity at your management level? And some of these issues will be more appropriate, you know, for large organizations first. Then it will filter down to the smaller organizations, the SMEs, and there'll probably be, a slightly different set of standards or regulations that will come. But even, I think, it makes good business sense. Any survey I've seen, people want to buy green products. And coming from the north, that's not a political statement, mind you. It's people want environmentally friendly, pieces, options, that they want to know, that they're not damaging the environment, and I think there is, the opportunity. Price points are critical. But there is increasing research that people are prepared actually to pay a slight premium, and we see that in supermarkets, organic food, where people are prepared to pay premiums for what they perceive to be more environmentally friendly, more environmentally beneficial products.
Definitely. I mean, it's, when you look out into the future, this has got to be just more and more important. Absolutely. Okay, just on another matter, just I see some comments on the technical hub. People may be experiencing some difficulties with it. I would say take the time to familiarize yourself with it, but by all means give us the feedback. I'm thinking in terms of maybe FAQs. Somebody's asking, where do I find the auditor's report? I think FAQs for practice might work really well in this thing, where you just list the 20 or 50, I don't know, key things that you want from a technical hub, so we can work towards getting that for you, just to improve your experience as a member of practice using this. It is considerably more dynamic and a much better use of member resources than Chariot. I can guarantee you that. So we'll just listen to you on that one, and because part of what we're here today is, let's say, what we're all here today is to listen to you, to hear your views, and to reflect that back. That's what we're here for. So are there any more questions? Nora, did you have anything you wanted to say generally based on questions coming into you? Nora, you're on mute there yet? Back again?
Am I back again? Great. Just to say that I can see that members and business have a lot of questions coming out of the benefit in kind concession and the treatment of the TWSS payments for clients and businesses who are self-assessed. So just to be sure that we're working on that, and I will share that information as soon as we get it. I think that revenue are, this is all new to them as well, and they need to work through and consider all the issues. So look, it is good that they're taking the time to consider these and to listen to our representations, and it'll be worthwhile, to hold tight. But I know, I do appreciate you're on the other side with them having to deal with your client on this, but as soon as I get the information, I'll share it with you.
Thank you very much, Nora. So there you go. And just finally, before we go, I'll just draw people's attention. We have a Thursday, isn't it, Jeremy? We've got
It is indeed Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. We have a short 1 hour session, and it's all about the government supports and accounting for the government supports. It's got great demand so far. I know from we've been circulated a couple of emails on it on social media as well. So it really is a focus session looking at how to account for the employee supports, TWSS, EWSS, but also, of course, the other supports, be it the tax debt warehousing, CRSS, rate reliefs, whatever else as well. So it'll be a very busy session. Looking forward to it, and I think it really is capturing the imagination, and there's a need for it there as well. And so if you haven't seen any details or you haven't booked on the session yet, there's plenty of time still to do that over the weekend or early next week.
Okay, so I said thank you very much to everyone. Paul, I'll just finish. 2021, full of challenges and opportunities and reflections for the profession.
I would say our clients need us. We need to get out there. We've done a fantastic job supporting our clients through the challenges and interpreting the government support scheme. That's going to carry on. I know as the revenue begins now to audit those supports, that's going to be the next wave of work coming at us in due course, and the various supports there. But I think the profession is in a very good place. We've adapted, we've reacted to the challenges, and we've been there for our clients and for the wider public interest too. So
thank you very much, Paul. Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks for both of our guests for coming on. Thank you, Jeremy, for putting it all together as usual, and to our members for coming on and for being here, and for giving us your feedback, and for continuing to give us your feedback. Thank you very much, everybody. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Take care, everyone.
super. Thanks, Lauren.